her sun and his moon. Oh my God. I know what this week's video is going to be. Holy shit.
Ladies, gentlemen, and those with the good sense to do away with the whole notion, I welcome you to the premier audio medium for all your Fazbear entertainment needs. The Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast. Note, FFPP is not responsible for any loss of appetite, disinterest, dismemberment, or other legally classified statuses. So strap in and enjoy.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast. I'm your host, the Toast, RyeToast, to talk about Five Nights at Freddy's like we always do. And if you may have noticed, we have a new setup. It's not done yet. A week or two, our family is still there to keep an eye on them, take care of them, and all that. So it's not like we're just abandoning them or anything. But, you know, cats don't do super well with a move. You want to try to get a room completely done and finished, put the cats in that room, and then when they're comfortable, slowly introduce them to the rest of the house. So we're still unpacking. Like, the floor of this office is filled with just random junk. And we go on vacation next week. If you don't watch the streams, not a lot different is going to happen next week. I'm working to get everything set up and scheduled, so things will just go out at their normal times. But there will not be streams next week because I'll be on vacation. So part of it, the cats not being here is we wanted to make sure the house was done, so they had a moved-in house to enter, so we didn't have to disrupt them anymore. And the other part of that is we didn't want to move them into a house and then have nobody here for a week. That would be terrifying for the cats, right? So the plan is we're going to finish moving in this week, go on vacation, and then after vacation, bring the cats over. I might, like right here, put a cat tower because, spoiler alert, I can like stand and walk around while I record again, which is huge. I really liked doing that. But, you know, when I do that, then the cat's not in the shot anymore. And I like having the cats in the video. I like my cats. So I might get a little cat tower so they can just be like chilling in the background while I'm pacing and talking about Five Nights at Freddy's. So I said this on stream on Friday, but I just, again, want to thank you guys. This community and the support the channels have received has been insane, you know, and none of this would be possible without y'all's support. And whether, you know, you've been a channel member for several years, whether you're Ember, the first ever Patreon, who's still now my head mod and has been sticking around, or whether, you know, you heard about me this week and you've watched like 2 of my videos. Regardless, thank you for the support, because none of this would be possible without you guys. And I mean that sincerely. But y'all are not here to listen to me talk about moving or yapping or being sentimental or anything like that. We want to talk about Five Nights at Freddy's, obviously. So I wanted to talk a bit more about Secret of the Mimic, because there's a topic I didn't shed too much light of my opinion on. And that's what the ghost situation in Secret of the Mimic is. Like, what spirits are here? Are there any actual ghosts still in the facility? Is it all robots now? Basically the question, are there still ghosts in Five Nights at Freddy's, right? Like that as the topic. And we're going to focus on Secret of the Mimic because, you know, any ghosts that may or may not exist in Secret of the Mimic will directly inform what we think about Help Wanted, about Security Breach, about Ruin, about whatever game comes out next, so on and so forth. So when talking about spirits in Five Nights at Freddy's, I think the most useful way to go about it is trying to find out, is there something that is acting in a way that possession makes the most sense to explain? And if so, is there a likely candidate for possession? So, for example, let's look at FNAF 1, right? We hear from Phone Guy that the animatronics act somewhat erratically, and if they see you, they might try to stuff you into an animatronic suit. So it's attempted to be explained mechanically, like these are robots malfunctioning. But then you look at them and they are acting very strange. They're spazzing out in the webcams. Golden Freddy literally teleports into your office. The posters are visually changing into pictures of crying children. And when the animatronics are waiting to kill you, you hear this like strained breathing noise. This isn't a mechanical error. This is ghost activity in some way. So we have animatronics and we're like, oh, okay, they're probably possessed because they're acting weird. Do we have a, potential possessor? And that's when you get the newspaper articles that are on the walls talking about the missing child incident, the 5 missing kids, at a Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. And it's like, okay, so we have 5 animatronics that are trying to kill us, 5 missing kids, and those animatronics are acting weird. Bada bing, bada boom, we have possession, right? We have spirits in FNAF 1. That's the way I like to approach, is there there presence in one of these games? Is look to see the behaviors we see. Does it seem like possession? And if it is there a potential person to be possessing this thing? Man, you know, I'm so tired, but I for whatever, I'm starting to Pavlov myself. And whenever I record a podcast, having trouble keeping my eyes open. And I don't know what it is. Luckily, you know, I was going to save this for halfway through the podcast, but I want to finish it now. I've got Gamersupps. And if you're confused of what I'm holding up, this is their new cans they're doing. This is the Guacamole Gamerfront 9000 flavor, otherwise known as Strawberry Lime. Gamersupps is like that, I don't know. But they just last week started launching canned versions of 3 of the beverages. Good, which is my favorite, cherry slushy. I don't have any. This is the last can I have left. They sent this to me like less than a week ago, and I ran through these cans. This flavor, which is strawberry lime, and goof juice, which is strawberry kiwi. All 3 are very good. My favorite by far is the cherry slushy. But it's really nice to get these carbonated. That's the thing. Because the whole thing about them being in a can is that, you know, it's prepackaged, it's caffeinated. I think its caffeine is 169 milligrams and L-theanine is 69 milligrams. Is L-theanine also a caffeine? No, it's an amino acid. While caffeine is a stimulant, they are both found in tea. They have different chemical structures and effects on the body. L-theanine is known for promoting relaxation and reducing anxiety. Oh, interesting. I wonder if it makes the come down from the caffeine less severe. Interesting. So as far as caffeine, it's only 170 milligrams of caffeine. 169, haha. And then 69 milligrams of L-theanine. I don't really know what the combination is. National Library of Medicine has a study, randomized controlled trial, the combined effects of L-theanine and caffeine on cognitive performance and mood. The abstract. The aim of the study was to compare 50 milligrams caffeine with and without 100 milligrams of L-theanine on cognition and mood in healthy volunteers. The effects of these treatments on word recognition, blah, 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 blah. The L-theanine and caffeine combination improved both speed and accuracy of performance of the attention switching task at 60 minutes, reduced susceptibility to distracting information, the memory task. The results replicate previous evidence, which suggests that L-theanine and caffeine in combination are beneficial for improving performance on cognitively demanding tasks. Interesting. You learn something new every day. Hey, this goes out to you, because I know a lot of my audience is 16 to 24. So a lot of you are in college. This is directly at you. If you have a question about anything in life, you look it up. And if you can, you find a study or a real source. If I catch any of you motherfuckers asking ChatGPT or, God forbid, Grok or some other goddamn AI for your question, you will not see the pearly gates. Anyway, I love learning things, and AI is killing that. Regardless, you know, I'm not going to stand here and be like, I'm a doctor and you should drink this. All I know is it tastes really good. It's got decent caffeine. And apparently these are maybe going to be in stores soon. I hope so. Because if so, I'm getting those goddamn good cans. Like I said, I like all 3. But good, I could not stop drinking them. Anyway, I say all this now because I want to drink some because I'm tired. So give me a second. All right, so that aside, going back to Secret of the Mimic and the possible spirits within it. I think it makes the most sense to just go through the roster and talk about, like, does it act possessed? And if so, is there a likely possessor? We're going to leave the Mimic for the end because I think that's the most interesting conversation. Let's go through the list, though. Every main robotic antagonist. So we're talking Jackie in the Box, Big Top, Chica, and the like, you know. I think those 3... No, because I think all 3 of them are being worn by the Mimic at the time. So if there's any possession going on, the possession would be the Mimic, not the animatronic itself. I think Jackie is fairly obvious that the Mimic is wearing it. I think Chica is fairly obvious the Mimic is wearing it. A lot of people got tripped up on Big Top and were like, hey, how would the Mimic wear that? We don't have a clean answer for it. I think there's two possible answers. I think the most likely option is that Big Top can be controlled in some way and Mimic is doing that. But I think it's more fun of an option to suggest that Big Top's hat is hollow and has a little control panel, and the Mimic, like Remy and Ratatouille, is in the hat just controlling it. I like that a lot. Is that accurate? I have no idea. You know, we actually got promotional art for Secret of the Mimic recently on Steel Wool's Twitter account, and in it, the eyes are spirals for Big Top. So people are like, wait, are you saying that the Mimic could just mass shift the size of its eyes? You know, so it might be one of those things where it's rule of cool, where feasibly, does it make sense for the Mimic to just put on Big Top? No, but it's cool. So we can just assume that the Mimic is controlling Big Top in some way. But I'm gonna continue to believe that Ratatouille is canon. But yeah, those three, I think they're all being puppeted by the Mimic, so there's no sense in debating are these three characters possessed, because, like, no. They're being warned. If anyone's possessed, it's the Mimic, which we will get to. But there are two antagonists that I think are worth bringing up in the possession conversation. The first one being Sleepy Moon, people have been calling him, but I'm just going to call him Moon. The weird man in the basement of Murray's Costume Manor. So if you go through the retail showroom, which is one of the latest accessible rooms in the game, there's this room-wide puzzle where you get a code to enter my favorite segment of the entire game. It is dark tunnels underneath Murray's Costume Manor, which you need to retrieve puzzle pieces out of using these Star Orphan nightlights, lighting up different sections of the maze and opening gates. The whole time, you are avoiding Moon. It's this large, glowing moon character humming and singing a lullaby wandering the halls. It is terrifying, it is difficult, it is one of the coolest segments in the game. I adore that. Not only is this one of the most intense segments of the game, and it's got really rewarding and difficult gameplay in a way that makes sense, because, like, your light source is the thing that powers the hallway, but also keeps you safe because it lets you look around. But this guy, while he's deadly, he gives off a light. So if you see a growing light, start to run. Like, I love how the gameplay is designed here. But one of the coolest parts about it is this section is totally optional. By the time you get the executive access permission, unless you're going for a secret ending, you go straight to the ending after you get back to the main area. You have to take that executive permission and go all the way to the showroom lobby to get to a completely hidden retail showroom. And then in there, you have to do another puzzle just to get access to this room. That is cool as hell. I think one of my favorite parts about Secret of the Mimic is how much the map is like this, where there are these earned secrets and really interesting segments. It's kind of like what Security Breach wanted to do with areas like Chica's Bakery, where in-game, you might not know about this, there's an entire Chica's Bakery section. It's the area we visit in Ruin that has the massive cupcake. You can get there in Security Breach. It's a huge area, pretty much just for a stealth upgrade, but because of this, we're never meant to go there, or we're never told to go there because it's an optional area. And because it only is a stealth upgrade, a lot of people miss it because they're not incentivized to go look. And it's also just out in the open. You can go there whenever. So it's never like, it's hard to communicate to the player to go explore there. Whereas with something like Secret of the Mimic, once you get this executive permission, you've been seeing doors that are locked behind executive permission, and there's a part of the brain that goes, I want to go figure out what was behind those doors. So that's awesome. But as far as the Moon character specifically, is he possessed? I want to say no. Now hear me out. This is an unpopular theory, but because there are some noises that need to be explained. But I'm of the belief that the Moon character is just a starving employee that's locked down there. So let me explain. We get an email right before we go down there from a MCM employee basically being like, hey, there's something down there. I don't know what it is, but it's terrifying and I'm locking the door forever. Do not go back there unless it is an absolute emergency. I will give you the code if you need, but please, God forbid, whatever is down there stays down there and does not come back up. Which, like, yes, could that be the Mimic? Technically, we don't know where the Mimic is once it becomes M2, but in the timeline of this email being written, it seems to me... Actually, do we get the years of these emails? No, we just get the day of we just get the day. The idea that, like, whatever was locked down there, if it is the Mimic, then, like, why is it chasing us? I know you could argue the Mimic just climbed out, but, like, it still seems weird to establish there is something trapped down here and then imply that it was never trapped and it just followed you back down there when you went down there. I think it makes a lot more narrative sense that whatever is said to be trapped down there is what we encounter. So then if that's the case, what is this Moon character? Is it an animatronic? Well, no, we see the blueprint. It is just a wearable suit. It's basically a big hollow moon with sticks that you grab that manipulate the arms. That's it. So, like, the Mimic could wear it, but again, as I've established, it's weird to tell the player there is something locked in this basement and it will not get out unless you open the door, and have that be a lie. That's a weird thing to tell the player, especially since the next thing we read when we go down there is a different employee saying, and I quote, "Night shift. Hey, is anybody up there? I'm stuck down here. The elevator isn't working and I'm getting really hungry. Is anyone getting this message?" That's the message we get down there. So, and then we see candy strewn about the office. I like to think that somebody went down there, got trapped over the night shift. Enough time goes by, nobody goes down there, that he just starts going crazy. He puts on the moon outfit. He starts roaming the halls looking for candy and rats to eat to stay alive. He loses his mind further. And then eventually somebody does go down there, sees this insane thing, comes back up, locks the door, and hopes that whatever that was will never come back up with him. I love the theory that Moon is just a starving, crazy man wandering the halls. It's like a Rat Man from Portal, but for the Murray's costume manner, right? I think that's such a fun concept. Now, there is the counter argument that when it moves nearby, you can hear whirring like machine noises, implying that it's the Mimic. My two responses for that would be, one, its singing sounds more human than anything the Mimic says throughout the game, I feel. And two, we don't know what the suit itself sounds like. Because a lot of the, like, people were at first said there was like metal footsteps, but that was like the suit jingling as it walked. That metal whirring, was there, a nearby cleanovac? Was the metal whirring just the noise the suit makes when you move it? I don't know. Look, is it likely that this is just a crazy starving guy? Probably not. It's probably the Mimic. But I think narratively the game is trying to tell us that this suit is just a crazy starving employee of Murray's Costume Manor. And I think that's sick as hell. But to wrap back to my original point, no, it's not possessed. It's unfortunately alive. Now, I guess it is possible that he died and then possessed himself in the suit, but typically possession in FNAF requires metal, and I don't know how much metal is on that suit, so take it as you will. However, the next character is where this starts to get even more interesting. The White Tiger. So this is in the basement right before the end of the game, right after you get the executive permission, where you have to go through the basement tunnels, and in those dark rooms is this white tiger costume that keeps teleporting around and trying to kill you. Look, I'm a simple man. If I'm in a dark, creepy basement and a costume suit is literally visibly teleporting after me, and that same suit teleported after me 2 times previous in this game in random rooms, one in a theater and one right outside the admin wing, both times being accompanied by ghostly giggling. It's a ghost. It's gotta be a ghost. Like, I don't know how anybody looks at that thing and goes, yeah, that's a Mimic. It's a ghost. Like, I don't know what you want me to tell you. Like, it's a ghost. It acts like a ghost. It looks like a ghost. It sounds like a ghost. We talked about FNAF 1. Golden Freddy, likely a ghost, like a ghostly projection, because it can teleport into your room. What the fuck do you think the White Tiger's doing? It's a ghost. That being said, the question then is, what's possessing it? Now, okay, I know some people are saying the Mimic is wearing it. But, like, no. You cannot explain the teleporting. It's not like a gameplay thing. It is visibly, purposefully teleporting in front of you. Now, some people have said Arnold is hallucinating because he's tired. Counterpoint, somebody brought up in a previous podcast, one of the emails I answered, if he hallucinated it, it would mean he's seen it before. The mind does not create, the mind replays. Where would he have seen this white tiger costume before? And not to mention, now you have to turn off lighting to see this properly, but it is in-game. It's not like a hidden thing. We're not going out of bounds for this. But if you get a good look at the tiger animatronic, the head is fully disconnected from the rest of the body. And that's something that no other animatronic in this game does. And not only is it like that, it uses it, because in-game, its head is like floating horizontal next to its neck. It is such a ghost. It's gotta be a ghost. Now, here's the shitty thing, though. If it's a ghost, whose fucking ghost is it? Because, like, look, I know the obvious answer here is David, because it's David's white tiger, and it's accompanied by childish giggling. But why would David's ghost be haunting the basement of Murray's Costume Manor? And I guess the halls as well. Especially in a vengeful manner. I would buy if the white tiger never attacked us. If it just teleported around, was generally creepy, and it never killed us. But the fact that it kills us in the basement, I'm like, why is David out here killing people? If it was just there to scare us, I could totally see, like, David's spirit is wandering, and to us, he's terrifying, but to him, he's just playing, like, hide and seek or whatever. But, like, why is he killing us? He's, like, 5 when he dies. He's, like, a 5-6-year-old who dies in a car accident. Why is he a vengeful spirit? Not the vengeful spirit, a vengeful spirit. How angry and vengeful could a 5/6-year-old ghost be? Right? That's the problem I'm having. Is if David is the white tiger, I have no idea why he's killing Arnold. It makes no sense to me. Everything else I can explain, like the whole like chasing us in the basement, appearing and giggling, that feels kind of like a ghost kid being a menace. Like peekaboo, like running around, like playing like that. That makes sense. But the killing, I don't know. And it's not just like a we got a heart attack from being too scared thing. In the death animation, I'm going to rewatch it. I'm pretty sure he like grabs you. Okay, you know, fair is fair. I rewatched the jump scare. He does grab you, but he just kind of looks at you. He's like getting both eyes in there. It's possible. I don't like this explanation, but it is possible. I just headbutted the microphone. I don't like this explanation, but it is totally possible that if this is David's spirit, he's not trying to kill you. He's trying to see who came into his basement to play. And he's grabbing you and trying to get a good look at you. And that terrifies a 40-hour sleep-deprived Arnold enough that his heart just gives out. It's possible. I don't love that explanation, but it is an explanation. So I guess I'll take it. But yeah, I think it has to be a ghost. How else do you explain teleporting around and leaving ghostly giggles? That is, the mimic can't teleport. And that's the end of it. The mimic can't teleport. I don't know what you want me to say. Similarly, a really cool section of the game, though. Really, really sick section. All right, we put it off long enough. We're like 25 minutes into the podcast. It's time to talk about the mimic. Is the mimic possessed? It depends on when you're asking, I think. I think it really depends on what part of the timeline you're asking about. And I don't love that. I don't love that at different points of the timeline, it may or may not be possessed. But let's go over what I mean by this. And this is where I'm kind of torn. Because there's 2 eras of the mimic. 3, technically. There's M1, the initial iteration that replicates Fiona. There's the in-between when, you know, I believe Fiona is in when M1 is in the Fiona box. And there's just an endoskeleton. And then there's M2, which I think really is born after Edwin beats it and it learns that violence. So it's like, are any of these possessed? M1, I think there is an argument to be made, was eventually possessed by Fiona. Do I think it's definitive that M1 is possessed? No. But I think there is enough evidence that you can make a very strong argument that M1 did get possessed by Fiona's ghost. There is problems with it. If Fiona died at Fall Fest, why is her ghost back at MCM? Totally valid. Granted, we get explained in Alone Together that when you're dead, your spirit wanders around the places you were alive in. So it doesn't necessarily mean like, it's kind of like how when Susie dies, like going off of Coming Home from Fazbear Frights, where we have the story of the ghost of Chica, who is still living in her house for a few days before she eventually fully possesses Chica or whatever. It's, you know, it's kind of loose about how the stuff works, but it's the idea of like, even if you die somewhere else, your ghost can visit the place you lived as well, like when you were alive. So I guess there is that to explain if she died in Fall Fest, how is she back here? But as far as like possessing M1 goes, I think it's less of M1 acts in a way that is indicative of possession, because as far as we're aware, M1 acts like any other mimic would act in that situation. I feel like M1 is very cut and dry of like, I've made a robot that can copy any person, and I've recently trained it on my dead wife, and it acts like his dead wife. Like, that's not like, oh, it has to be possessed, but I think there's enough evidence suggesting it might be possessed that helps. One of the biggest pieces of evidence is that 4625 hidden audio log in the White Tiger basement, where we have Edwin trying to like spirit box for Fiona. Now, is this just the mimic playing audio? Possibly, but it is implying that, you know, Edwin heard something that sounded like Fiona down here, and he brought something to capture, or like to try to communicate with that. So the idea of the mimic being made and then Fiona possessing into this basement, possible. We also get the idea where there's the one audio log. I believe it's an audio log. Yes, it is. It's when Edwin's like, I figured it out. There's a leak. Somebody told them about M2. Well, they can't have M2. It's not ready yet. I can't even get one to work. I don't know why it worked in the first place, talking about M1, but I can't replicate it. So if the M iterations are just taking the mimic schematics and training it to replicate a specific person, the idea of it replicating M1, like M1 being created but not being able to make M2, what if that secret spice is possession? Like, M1 was kind of replicating Fiona but not great, and then Fiona possesses M1 and suddenly it's a perfect replica of Fiona in many ways. You know, that could be the secret spice of why M2 isn't working, because nobody's possessing M2. So he's like, I'm doing all the same stuff but it's not working. Maybe it's because it's not being possessed. Again, this is all to say, do I think M1 was definitively possessed? I'm leaning that way. I don't think there's enough evidence to claim that it's a strong theory, though. And then there is also the question that if M1 was possessed by Fiona, there's something we have to consider that is specific to Five Nights at Freddy's. In this franchise, spirit is attached to metal more than anything. So if Fiona possessed the mimic when it was M1, when Edwin uploaded M1's personality to Mexis and made the F10N4 console that we speak to in the basement, did Fiona's ghost go with that programming? Or did Fiona's ghost remain attached to the mimic endoskeleton and only the M1 personality was carried over? That's something we would have to ask, because then that tells us, like, okay, well, if M1 eventually becomes Glitchtrap, if that's the case, does that mean Glitchtrap has Fiona's spirit on it? Or no? Is Fiona's spirit still attached and is helping to animate the mimic and likewise M2? I think both are possible. I really do. Because at that point, I think it would be less that Fiona is actively possessing the mimic and more along the lines of, there's a remnant situation going on with the metal being possessed by a spirit, which is helping to power the mimic in some way, And then we have the M2 era of the mimic where, it's just being violent towards everything and trying to destroy everything. Putting aside what we just said about M1, if we're taking M2 in a vacuum, I think it's unlikely that M2 is possessed. I do, because I don't see the violence of M2 being guided by David, for the same reason why I struggle seeing David being the White Tiger. But if David's anyone, he's the White Tiger. I think M2 is the original Mimic, but it's tainted by agony. So is that possession? You could argue yes. But when I'm talking about possession, I mean like a specific spirit. Whereas agony is kind of like this universal agitator, where like if the Mimic was affected with agony, it wouldn't necessarily be replicating a person, but whatever it's doing, it would be doing it violently and aggressively, which we see in M2. You know, it's the idea of like, what do you think is more likely? Edwin beat up the Mimic endoskeleton and it suddenly learned violence and only wants to replicate violence, or as Edwin is grieving over the death of his son and taking it out on the Mimic and beating the Mimic senseless, in that moment, is he pouring agony into this endoskeleton, creating the M2 we know, who does the things it always did, but now as violently as possible? I think that makes the most sense. I think it's much more likely that M2 is simply a Mimic tainted by agony rather than a possessed Mimic. Is it possible it's possessed? Yes, very much so. I mean, hell, it's possible that M2 is Fiona's spirit with Edwin's agony. Holy shit, wait, is that why it's Sun and Moon? You are Sun and you are Moon. Fiona possessed M1. M1's personality was removed, but Fiona's spirit remains attached to the Mimic because the spirit follows the metal. And then that possessed endoskeleton was beaten by Edwin, his agony pouring into it. And now it's a creation. Oh my god, now it's a creation of everything the Mimic schematics is, powered by Fiona's remnant and Edwin's agony, her sun and his moon. Oh my god! I know what this week's video is going to be. Holy shit. Like, I love that, actually. Yeah, Is that the secret of the Mimic? That the Mimic is both Fiona's remnant and Edwin's agony. And that's why it's so strong, because it's because in the Fazbear Frights books, Eleanor really wanted remnant and agony. She wanted both. She craved both. I wonder if being made of remnant, being powered by remnant and agony makes you somehow more powerful than something else. And maybe the secret of the Mimic, the reason it's such a threat is because it has remnant and agony. Oh, I need to percolate on that. Yeah. All right, we're gonna go to questions because I need to immediately break out a brainstorming pad. So if you want your questions sent on the podcast, feel free to send them into Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast at gmail.com. It's in the description, copy and paste because it's a pain to type out. Our first question comes from PV0, him. I wanted to bring up something really interesting I noticed. At the end of Ruin, where the Mimic wore the mascot costume, Cassie and the Mimic ran into a room that almost everyone tied to the scooping room from Sister Location. However, I had noticed that the room, door, and security room are extremely similar in layout to the workshop in Secret of the Mimic. I have no idea if you've noticed this. I didn't have time to look back at the streams, but I thought you might like this idea. Thank you for your question. I have noticed this. I'm wondering more and more if Murray's costume manor burnt down partially and was remade into the Pizzaplex much later down the line. Only because repeatedly there are sections of Murray's costume manor that are really reminiscent of the Pizzaplex. And I don't think it would like line up one to one, but it's something that makes me curious. Like the Welcome Show elevator is really similar to the elevator in the atrium of the Pizzaplex. Like you mentioned, the Springlock workshop is so similar to that scooper, quote unquote, we see at the end of Ruin, to the point where like they both have, like you said, there's the circular pad with the scooping arm, there's a office behind it, and to get there is a long hallway with multiple doors. Like they're pretty damn close. And that's not all there is, but like those are like two really good examples of like there is a lot in this facility that is reminiscent of Security Breach. And I wonder, is it part that the buildings were reused? Maybe. Is it part that the Mimic was involved in some way in the creation of the Pizzaplex, and when it was drawing up those blueprints, it based it off of what it knows? After all, we know there are the help wanted rooms in the Pizzaplex, where there are rooms in the Security Beach Pizzaplex, which are like weird recreations of levels from Help Wanted. And that was always kind of chalked up, once we knew about the Mimic, that was kind of chalked up to like, oh yeah, the Mimic is recreating the rooms it knows in some of these side rooms. So maybe something like that is going on with the Pizzaplex and Edwin's and Murray's Costume Manor. It's totally possible. I think it's also possible it might still be linked with Sister Location in some way. Because if this Springlock workshop was similar to the scooper we see in Ruin, we have an audio log where it seems like there was an older workshop and then everything starts getting remade upstairs. And we have those old tunnels that go to the manor in Secret of the Mimic. I wonder if there's a similar scooping arm, but an older model in the tunnels and work areas underneath the manor, which then eventually is turned into Sister Location when the Aftons move in, essentially. But yeah, I think you are right to call that out, and there are even more similarities that I think are worth looking into. So thank you for your question. Our next one comes from Neo, he, she, they. What do you think of the FNAF fandom, specifically the shippers? I personally think that in-canon shipping is a bit silly, except the fact that Glamrock Freddy is canonically gay, which I headcanoned before Ruin, by the way. But are there any ships you like? I think it would be funny if William and Henry were in a Forbidden Yaoi relationship, but that's what AO3 is for. Thank you for your question. You know, shipping is always an interesting conversation in FNAF, because FNAF is a fandom, a very large, a very voracious fandom. And fandoms like to ship characters, but the problem with a franchise like FNAF when it comes to shipping is the characters are all either animatronics possessed by children or dead children. So there's no one really to ship. And I think that's part of the reason why FNAF fans get so feral when new adult characters are introduced into the fandom. I think that's part of the reason why Vanessa had so much interesting material made about her. Is because we got like an adult character. Like, but we finally have something to talk about shipping wise, you know? But as far as like what ships I have, like you said, Glamrock Freddy, Glamrock Bonnie, especially since the Glamrocks aren't even possessed likely. And also William and Henry Forbidden Yaoi, even better. Toxic Old Man Yaoi. We at RyeToast support Toxic Old Man Yaoi. William and Henry, top of that list. Frankly, do I say it? Sure. William Henry Edwin in a toxic, self-defeating, angry love triangle. And, you know, Dispatch and Arnold. Again, you know, the only like 6 characters we have that are adults in this game. But yeah, that's my take is I think most of the shipping in the FNAF fandom is harmless fun, you know, and I'm not one of those people who like, if you do like a smasher pass with the FNAF animatronics, are like, aren't those possessed by children? Obviously, you're talking about the design of the animatronic. But yeah, I think it's, I think the shipping does get a bit silly because of the lack of options, frankly. But thank you for your question. Our next one comes from Logan, he, him. I had a question, I'm still thinking about it, but I want your thoughts on it. I was watching Markiplier's FNAF Help Wanted 1 Let's Play, and in episode 5, he gets the 5th tape, and Tape Girl talks about there being something cleaned out. Likely a desk, but she immediately says she thinks it's the client who sent Fazbear Entertainment. In her words, that stuff. And on top of that, they also told them to scan it in to expedite the process so we wouldn't have to program any pathfinding ourselves. Then she calls it a budget thing. Now, I'm aware that Fazbear is cheaper than my dad, but I'm still wondering who it was that even gave Fazbear Entertainment the code. This is before Help Wanted was still in development, so it can't be Vanny, and Vanny made GGY, so cross him off the list too. Scrap Trap is still at FNAF 6 after the fire. After doing that for a bit, I started thinking, could it be the Mimic? Maybe because maybe William used the Mimic as a failsafe. As in, if he dies, the Mimic sends a Mimic program, and then had to learn his mannerisms, become the new William Afton. I don't know, but I do want to know where you stand on my idea. Yeah, I think the Mimic itself sending it, I don't know how I feel about that. But I think if it so happens that Fazbear Entertainment got their hands on the Mimic schematics, I could totally see just Fazbear themselves not trying to create Glitch Trap or bring back William Afton, but like, hey, we're making this VR game that has all these animatronics in it, and we have this old Mimic schematic program that can replicate the persona of anything, so go ahead and scan it in, but it's proprietary, so once you scan it in, we're taking it right back. So I think what was scanned in is the original Mimic program that starts training itself and learning about William Afton via Help Wanted and possibly any of the previous experience. So that being said, who sent it and who took it back, I think it's just Fazbear. I think it's most likely that Fazbear Entertainment gave them the information and then took it away when they were done with it, not as a budgetary cost-cutting reason that eventually goes wrong. I think that makes the most sense. But thank you for your question. Our next question comes from Joey, he, him. I watched your latest theory about how Henry was originally working with Edwin, but was enticed by William Afton to leave for Fazbear Entertainment during the MCM decline. I was convinced that was what was intended, but then I came across a small detail in one of the audio logs that might contradict that line of thinking, that I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on it. In the audio log concerning the decision from Fazbear to move away from the Springlock suits, Edwin says, I got the change request from Hen last night. None of this makes sense. I'm almost done. Why change it now? Since the change request is coming from Henry, wouldn't that mean that Henry is already part of Fazbear? It's possible that Henry left Fazbear before this log was recorded, but judging by how petty Edwin is in some of the other logs about the defected employees, I doubt Edwin would still be calling him Hen if he had recently defected to Fazbear and is now bringing him the change orders as part of his new position. Another possibility is that Henry received the change order from Fazbear before Edwin saw it and brought it to his attention. But both of those solutions feel a bit convoluted to try and explain it away when the wording is pretty straightforward that Henry is a part of Fazbear. Thank you for your question. This is my mistake for not mentioning this in last week's video, but I did have an idea for this, and I guess I'll bring it up now. And it comes down to, communication methods. The idea of if Fazbear has been working for MCM for a long time, and if they're actively working on a project, it would make sense if Henry is the main animatronic designer that Fazbear would send change requests, revision requests, and all of this stuff to Henry directly, and then Henry would would see the order, budget it out, and then send the budgeted order to Edwin to get approval for the work, right? It's kind of like a pretty basic work structure of say I'm running this channel and I have somebody else handling my thumbnails and titles, and then I have, so I'm like, hey, I made the video, you get a thumbnail and title together. And then that person who I've hired goes and reaches out to BarBADroid, the artist who I hire for all of my art on my channels, and goes, hey, I need this thumbnail made. And then, I know it doesn't really make sense in this metaphor, because they're receiving the work. They're sending the work, not receiving the work. But essentially, a very common... So forget the metaphor. We'll just go for a more direct example or more direct explanation. A very common workflow in these types of situations, if Edwin is the CEO and Henry is the head of design, is that since the project has already been established, going, hey, while we work on this, Fazbear, you can contact our head of design directly, and then we can communicate on creating those animatronics for you. So now Fazbear has a line of communication open to Henry, and they are back and forthing the design of these animatronics. So Henry sends a prototype over, then Fazbear sends a revision request to Henry. Then, often if it involves an increase in the budget, it would need approval. So revision request, understandable, almost done, here's a proof. And then Fazbear sends over a change request saying actually start over with these designs. That needs an increased budget. So now it's, okay, I'll take this change request and the budget request and I'll send that to Edwin for approval. Then Edwin receives the change request from Hen from Fazbear, right? Because the wording is, I got the change request from Hen last night. So Henry receives the Fazbear request, divvies up what the budget would be, sends it over to Edwin. I think that's perfectly reasonable. And a bonus for this idea is, if that's what's happening, this could be how Fazbear initially gets into contact with Henry Emily. The idea of now that we're working on this project together, you have direct communication with my head of animatronic design. And that's how William gets a hold of him, because he has direct communication with him. Frankly, that could be one of the reasons why William initially started the project. Hey, let's do this massive project specifically so when we start, you'll give me the contact information for your most valuable employee, and I will steal him from you. So I like that explanation a lot. Again, is Henry MCM canon? Who knows? I think it's a good theory. I did see somebody mention on Twitter, I have to look back into it because I only saw it in passing, but somebody mentioned on Twitter there might be a text log that goes against it. So I'll have to, or possibly an audio log. I don't remember which. Something about Henry using the Springlocks for Fredbear's Family Diner. So he might already have been a Fazbear employee. I don't know. I have to look more into that and see if there's any counter arguments or if that just disproves it. I don't know. I hope it doesn't because I do like the theory, but I'd rather be right than something I like. So we'll see. I have to look back into that. Again, I was like scrolling, saw a picture. I'm like, interesting. And then I kept scrolling. But thank you for your question, Joey. And our last question, I'm not going to... Okay, so this is a special one. I'm not going to debate this or go into it. I'm not going to say who sent this in. But I pull this up because it made me feel really good that like, hey, the fandom's all right. You know, there's always going to be new people in the fandom, and that's cool. Because I got an email where the email says, and I quote, "What if Foxy is good and in part possessed by Phone Guy, and he's checking on you because Phone Guy doesn't want what happened to him to happen to you?" What a throwback. You know, when FNAF 1 first came out, we all were like, what if Foxy is a good guy? I was never on that train, but I love that in the year of our Lord 2025, people are still discovering the franchise and coming to the same possible conclusions, which is really funny to me. And if you sent this in, this is no shade at you. I just think it's really charming that people are still coming up with that theory. But if you want your questions talked about on the podcast, feel free to send them into Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast at gmail.com. That is in the description to copy and paste. Good pain to type out. But until next time, as always, thank you for watching the Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast, where the pizza abilities are endless. We hope to enjoy your future patronage. Bye-bye for now.